And that is the Shorty Awards in 2 minutes. The actual award show is 3 minutes. We cut it down. It'll be coming up in April, and entries are open now, so go check out shortyawards.com if you're interested in winning one. But now I'm really excited to introduce our panel. And I'll start with my left. We have Claudia thought she escaped NYU, but now she's back.
You made me come back.
Girl with no job, on you,
Hey,
take
everyone.
it away.
Hi, I'm Claudia. Nobody knows my real name, girl with no job, most people know me by. I guess I'm best known for being like the greatest Instagrammer of all time. That's just what people say, but I didn't say that. And Snapchatter, but whatever, it's up in the air. And I guess I'm here to just talk about what it's like being an influencer, working with brands, engaging with my audience, you know, all that good stuff.
Great.
Do I need to say anything else?
Tell us about how you first, let's dive
My
right
shtick.
in now. Like, what's your shtick?
Yeah.
When did you first create your Instagram account?
So I went to NYU, and when I was a freshman, I had like all this free time because I went to a really rigorous like dual curriculum high school where I was in school like 7 to 5, and then I came to NYU and I had like nothing to do. So I had all this free time and I was loving it, but then I got a little bored and my mom was like, "You should get an internship." And the thing about NYU is everyone's like on the career track. Like they basically come to college with like a job offer in 4 years, and I was just like sitting around in my dorm like watching Friends. So I got an internship, which is like in fashion, which is what everyone does. And it was just torture. Like it was before that whole Vogue intern thing happened. It was like way before interns started getting paid and were treated with any respect. So I was basically this unpaid like slave who everyone was mean to. And I used to write my mom these long emails about how like the working world is so treacherous and I can't understand why everyone's so mean to me. And she thought the emails were hilarious, which is really nice. And she said, "You should start a blog." And I was like, such a mom thing to say, but I did. And the blog was called Girl with a Job. It was like super amateur on Tumblr. I thought I was like Perez Hilton, but nobody read the blog. And then I got fired. So I just changed it to Girl with No Job for accuracy purposes. And like at Gregory, I kind of wanted to get the username on all social platforms. So I took it on like Pinterest, Twitter, anything I thought that was kind of up and coming. And I just kind of really dove into Instagram and found this weird like community of young girls who like memes. Like it's super specific. And then I just kind of took it from there. And so even though I really started the blog first, most people now know me from my Instagram or Snapchat, and like nobody reads my website. But that's fine. I'm not upset about it.
And doesn't it suck to have a job now?
Yeah, like this is a full-time job. I had to wake up at like 9 o'clock for this. But it's fun. It's fun.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Frankie Greek.
Hi.
Tell us about yourself.
My name is Frankie. I call myself a Snapchat journalist because it grabs people's attention and really ticks off actual journalists. I work in social media. I'm a content creator, all social video, Snapchat specifically. That's kind of how I got my start. But I do, my LinkedIn says I'm a social media whiz kid because I kind of do a little bit of everything.
Great, and I'm excited. Well first tell us, how did you get into the whole social media world?
Well, I started working for the Shorty Awards a year and a half ago.
Really?
Yeah, believe it or not. So Nick is in the audience. She's my roommate. I met her on Craigslist.com. And she started working for the Shorty Awards soon after I moved to New York. And they were doing the 7th annual award show, and they didn't have anyone to run their Snapchat. And I was like, I will do it. I would like to come to your fancy internet award show. So I did it. I stole an all-access pass. I don't know if I ever told you that. I wasn't supposed to have one.
This is news to me.
Yeah, this is news. And I just did little Snapchat interviews with everyone, and then I was like, wow, Snapchat's awesome. I like this a lot. And then the Shorty Awards and Nick and Megan and Greg offered me a job shortly after. I ran all their social for a year and a half, and I hosted like a weekly Snapchat talk show every Wednesday, and it started to like get people's attention and build this following, and then we got some fun guests on there. We did a couple episodes with some like Snapchatters and some like Vine stars. We did one with Adam Rose, who's a YouTuber, and then the Holy Grail was we did one with Gary Vaynerchuk, and that was when I was like, wow, this is cool. And that kind of propelled my Snapchat journalism host career. Now I do Snapchat for Fuse TV, and I've been covering a lot of the music festivals for them this summer. And yeah, I basically get to hang out and Snapchat everything.
Great, so the career advice we can extract so far is either get fired or go on Craigslist.com for networking. Great. And I'm excited that we have Carolina here, who's VP of Comms for Univision, and we can kind of hear the other side of what it's like to work with these influencers. And of course, Carolina has a great social account herself.
Good morning, I'm Carolina. I'm not as, as fun as these lovely girls. I like to think so outside of work, but I work in corporate, so I have a lot of sort of education to do around working with these great girls and the creators out there and influencers, especially from a comm standpoint. Something I follow social media and I'm on it all the time, so it's very important to make sure that internally, even working with brands and our partners, that they understand how we work with creators and how we use our own sort of talent to help them sort of amplify their content and engagement. And so it's a really fun part of my job. And I actually got to Univision because of Twitter. I met my who used to be my boss, she's no longer there, through Twitter. Basically, she says that I sort of used to yell at her because she didn't know how to use Twitter correctly. She likes to tell that side of the story. I like to say, no, I was just, sort of trying to help you to make sure that, you were effectively using Twitter. And so from there, I used to work at the New York Times. She took me to Univision, and I've been there 6 years.
Great, and tell us too, just how do you use social media yourself? And how does it kind of dovetail with like being a corporate professional?
Yeah, there's so many platforms. I think we're sort of overwhelmed, but I like to use them more differently. Snapchat has been a really great opportunity to see how the creators are sort of managing their brands and what kind of content they like, and it helps sort of inform what kind of things we can create and campaigns and who we can work with. Twitter, I've seen it's more the new sort of one-to-one connection, and I like that, and that's something I really appreciate also from seeing how creators are using it. Because I think people forget sometimes it's very easy to just broadcast, and when you think about social media, I think sometimes it's easy to forget the social part of social media. And Instagram, I think with Instagram stories, I'm still, I use it all the time, but I'm using Snapchat first, because I still think it's easier to use, much more fun, the filters and all of that. So, it's important to make sure that you're part of each of the platforms and using them constantly to make sure that, you're informing yourself and seeing how people are using it so that you can create a great strategy.
Great, and before we delve into more questions, I want to invite everyone to tweet any questions for the panel. Just tweet it to me at Gregory with the hashtag Tri-State Conference, just like it says on your brochure. And we'll read some out. We'll also invite some people if we have time to come up to the mic too. But first, since we have an audience here and it's PRSA, so a lot of people come from a traditional PR background where they're taught, write a press release, find the right journals to pitch, hopefully using Muck Rack, and then reach out to them and say, hey, here's a story idea. We think it'd be interesting to your audience. Do you want to write it? Of course, you can't pay journalists, or at least you're not going to find many journalists in the U.S. who would accept money for their campaign, and there's also this very different relationship with the journalists. So people coming from that world of PR pitching journalists, what do they need to know now when their boss tells them put together an influencer campaign and have it ready tomorrow?
I feel like something really important that I've learned is it's really important to look at the numbers past just how many followers someone has. So I have 2.5 million followers, and someone like Britney Spears, who has I don't know, this is a wrong number, but somewhere around 20 million followers, maybe more, my engagement is higher than Britney Spears. So that's super important to look at. So yes, Britney Spears has a wider audience, but I'm engaging with my audience stronger. So that's something you wouldn't ordinarily think. It's who should we pick? As if anyone would ever have these options. Girl with No Job or Britney Spears. Well, Britney Spears has 17,000 times more followers, but Girl with No Job is more engaged. So it's really important to look at analytics besides just follower count. I think that's what people see first, obviously, but it's more important to look beyond that.
Cool, and kind of more broadly, how would you all suggest kind of finding the right influencers to work with? Looking for engagement, but let's say I'm marketing this water, or I'm marketing a phone, or just any product. How do I know of all the journalists out there, which is the one that I should pay attention to and approach?
It's definitely about research, and that, the original question, that answer is going to be, you have to do your due diligence and find the right influencers. I think that the way that we think about influencers is really changing, and people are starting to realize that, in a way, everyone is an influencer and everyone has their own circles of influence. So depending, like you might not need, you know, someone with 80 million followers, but you need someone who can either has the same ideals as whatever you're trying to put together, or they speak on similar topics, but also they're not oversaturated. You're not going for the person who like every different day is doing something branded or something, you know, for this company or that, because then it just becomes noise at that point. Like their followers aren't into it anymore, and you just get lost in the shuffle of whatever else they're like promoting that week. So you have to find the influencer that take more than like 15 minutes, like really like sit down, and this is something that I find that a lot of I've done some work with influencer agencies or talent agencies, and the ones that I like working with are the ones that really invest in like getting to know the people as people, and like what do you want to be doing, what do you want to be working on, instead of the ones who are like, this is my bucket of influencers, I'm going to pick one at random, like you can be on this campaign, because that's just not the way things can get done anymore.
I just want to add to what Claudia was saying, because I'm not a fan of like just looking at the followers. That has been a sort of big thing that I've internally have pushed, because you know, oh my God, they have so many followers, let's go with that. I'm like, let's wait, because I want to see like what their engagement is like, because if you're really looking to make an impact with that content and people take action with that content, you need to see what the engagement like. And we had a campaign where we had a major artist and a really fun creator I love working with, and his engagement was like 80% more on Instagram, and on Twitter even more so, just because he just had, you know, he had that approach with his fans. They already knew that content. The content was also organic. It was something we agreed upon, and we brainstormed with him. And we even had a scenario where, and this is why the sort of knowing the creator is very important, and having that personal relationship, because you know, sometimes things don't go as planned, and you know, there was something not communicated to the artist, and he wasn't ready to do the, you know, sort of idea that we came up with. And so I asked the creator, I'm like, dude, I need you to like improvise here, because we're here, we're in Vegas, and it needs to happen. And he did. He improvised, and he created extra content, and it was beyond the scope, but it really had to do with the fact that we knew him well, we knew what kind of content he created, and we had a good relationship with him. And I think that's very important when you're looking to work with creators or influencers, however you want to call them, because that's going to make an impact overall, not just for you, for your campaign, but for them. They're going to want to work with you more.
And how do you go about the financial relationship? Like when the publicist calls you up, should they just be like, hey, look, I have X, I have a budget of 5,000. Do you want it or not? Or do you have a long conversation first? Do you throw out the number? Should they throw out the number? How do you work it out?
If I've learned anything, it's that everybody lies about how much money they have. And sometimes I like to take advantage of that. But kind of the way that I work, and I don't know if this is the way that everybody else does it, but it's really important to me when a brand comes to me and we decide to work together that it's both good for my brand and the actual brand. It's important for me to know what their goals are. A lot of the times people set unrealistic goals and they think, you know, you have 2.4 million followers, we're gonna sell 2.4 million buckets of fries, or whatever it is. Fries are so on brand for me. So it's important for me to know what their goal is, kind of to set realistic expectations, and then to also know like what they want to get out of it. Like a lot of times they just want Instagram followers, or they want brand awareness, or they want exposure about this new product. So that kind of helps me cater to my audience when I know specifically what they want. And then as far as the financial part goes, it really, I always just want everyone to be upfront and transparent. I'm saying how much money you have, and I'll let you know what I can do for that amount. So as long as we keep the waves of communication open, everything is great.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And there's something that I've been kind of preaching. Like, transparency is huge for me on all levels. Like, I'm super transparent with my audience. I'm super transparent with the people that I work with. I think it's best to like talk about money sooner rather than later, so that way no one is kind of really wasting their time. But also, like, I'm trying to, like, I'm on a campaign to completely get rid of the language that, like, we don't have a budget. Because, like, you do have a budget. I'm just not in your budget. You have not budgeted me into your budget. So, like, and sometimes people will say, oh, we're working with this enormous brand. They don't have a budget. I'm like, that's just simply untrue. But, yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely about managing expectations and figuring out what exactly they want and what's best for your audience and what you feel comfortable. I'm also a big believer in like over-delivering, but I think it's good going into it to like under-promise and over-deliver for a price point that you're both comfortable with.
Caroline, can you tell us also just kind of how Univision kind of works with influencers in general, and what
So
that whole
we work
landscape's
with
like.
them in different ways because there's still bloggers out there, so that was the earliest form of influencers. And the way that we work with them is from like a journalistic editorial standpoint. Obviously we don't pay them, but we find if we know that they have novella blogs, then we're gonna work with them to give them exclusive content. Then with creators, we started working with them as soon as even before the rise of Vine. And even before they used to charge us. But I think with Univision, it was different because
But you don't have any budget, correct?
You'd be surprised. Oh, can we get a creator to do this? We need money, so let's find money. But talking about like 2013, the benefit, at least with Univision, is that we have the power of our platform. So we have TV and we have radio and we have music events with artists. So there was sort of that exchange, to make sure that at least it was a valuable experience. And now we actually have our Univision Creator Network. So we have our own, network of creators. And, our approach has been very much about that sort of one-to-one relationship and making sure that we're actually delivering value for the creators and that, we're helping them grow their platforms, whether it's YouTube or whatever platform they're looking to grow. And giving them the expertise of leveraging our resources and sort of our portfolio. So we work with them in sort of those three different ways. But in terms of like working with creators and managing expectations, because we work with brands as well, and more than ever, brands want to have creators as part of their campaign. So there's still a lot of education that needs to happen, and we have. I think the research is important in being immersed in the different platforms to know what kind of content these different creators are developing and what they like. Because then you kind of, you're able to start the conversation off well and transparent. And then you can, start working with the budget because you know how much it's going to cost, depending on what platforms you want to push content out of. And for that idea with the artists that we had, I remember I was texting like, hey, we have this idea. What do you think? Is this something you'd be interested in? It'll be aligned with that type of content that you've been creating. Like, yeah, I love it, great, blah, blah. And then the conversations start with the publicists or managers or whomever, But I think really understanding like the type of content they create and having your goals very clear. Like if you're looking to grow followers, then you may not need the Vine, them to create Vine content. Or if you're really looking to, sort of create more conversation around something, maybe that's where Twitter comes in. But if you really need to be clear on the goals, and I think that's where the relationship with the creator and realistically on the budget will make sense.
Here we have a great question from Twitter.com. What is the one mistake publicists make when connecting with an influencer? This was asked by Christine Rochelle at CLROCHELLE, so follow her as well as our panelists. And what's the mistake they're making when they're reaching out to you?
I think it's like a game of poker. And I think a lot of the times, I do this too, publicists and influencers and really anyone tends to overplay their hand. And I can definitely say I've gotten cocky at times and been like, no, like it's not enough, like, and you learn as an influencer, like from when I did my first deal to, how I do it now is totally different and it's totally evolved from both the creative process but also the financials. But I think that a lot of the times, publicists or brands be like, you're one of 700 million influencers, like why do we need you? I'm like, you reached out to me, so you tell me. But everyone, I think, overplays their hands a little bit.
I think just not doing research again, and I've had publicists like straight up lie to me and be like, "Oh my God, we love your Snapchat, blah blah," blah. And I'm like, "Cool, like what's your most like memorable?" And they've never seen a single thing I've done. Or this is a funny one. Someone emailed me once and congratulated me on like being the founder of the Shorty Awards, and I was like, "That's not me. That's not who I am. Like that is one smooth Google search. My entire life is on the internet." Like I've also gotten the like the Dear X, like they didn't autofill my name into the thing. So
I got
like
a Dear Hannah once.
Nice, yeah. So I just
My
write.
name's Claudia.
Yeah. Or people think I'm a boy, and I'm like, wow, you really didn't Google me. So yeah, I think just like people want to work with people that they like. Like that's just like a basic human instinct. So like be nice, be personable, like get to know them, and don't just like approach them as like a business opportunity strictly.
That's true. On our end, I don't know, I hope we haven't made any mistakes in that sense because I think we've been pretty smart about working with influencers and creators. I think it's more with sort of the partners that we work with and their expectations, which is where managing expectations really are important. because they will want to approve posts and things like that. And if you're creating content in real time, especially if you're live tweeting a music event, there's no way that you're going to be able to approve something in real time. And so I think those are some of the craziest requests that we've gotten. Like, yeah, we need to. When are you going to send us a post? I'm like, no, we send you examples of the type of content we'll be creating, and this is what it may look like, but we have to go with the flow of the show. So if there's something, that is, that everyone's talking about, and we want to take advantage of that, then we will. And I promise you that we're going to take care of your content, of this content, because it's not only our brand, it's the creator's brand, and it's your brand. So there's no intention here to make to position you in a negative way or something that may not be ideal for your brand.
And now, one thing that's kind of new to the PR profession is asking for real budgets for campaigns. A lot of them are used to, pitching journalists doesn't cost anything. Maybe they send a press release which costs a few $100, and they'll have their annual budgets. So when someone here is thinking about, okay, I want to do my company's first influencer campaign, I want to go to my boss and get a budget approved, what do you think is like the minimum amount of money that they need to get in their budget to make an impact, and what's the kind of range they should be thinking about to actually know how much to ask for?
Well, that's too broad of a question because it's not a standardized economy where it's like you have X amount of followers, everyone seriously makes up their own budget. Both brands, influencers, publicists, everyone makes it up. So I would just say a budget that everyone should aim for is within reason.
Yeah, no, it's still very much like the wild, wild west. Like, you can charge whatever you want, you can ask for whatever you want. I would say, be smart about it. I mean, don't go in there with a super low ball and then expect to get 10 million followers out of it. And also have a very when I send people, when people pitch me, or when I send people here's what I can do for you, I have it itemized out. I'm like, this is how much this costs, and if you also want this is how much this costs, and so on and so forth. So they literally know what they're paying for. And I think some people just throw money out and then expect them to create miracles. So I think, having that transparency and having that clear communication, and everyone knows what they're getting into. But yeah, it's hard to kind of just slap a price tag on it.
I would just say a few $1,000s to be realistic here.
That works too.
Okay. Because even with our own creators, let's bring these creators, can we get our creators from UCN to, help us promote this new show? And we're like, we still have to pay them. This is their labor. I think just realistically, I know that everything, because I've seen how things are broken down, and that's how we've played around, with the goals that we have, but it's a few $1,000s. So, if you really want to have an effective campaign, just be clear on your goals, make sure that you have a few $1,000s in the budget, and look at the list of creators that you really like and see, which one makes sense. But I think that's one important thing that I need to make sure is allocated in the budget, especially now because we're in such a content, creation world. And it's not just about press releases anymore. You need to be creative with how you push out content and make news about the initiatives that you have for your company or your brand or your agency, whatever it is. So budget for you $1,000.
If I can pop in, I feel like you touched on something really important, and we're using both the term creator and influencer, but they're two totally different things. A lot of people don't make their own content, and those people should be paid less. It's less labor. But when you make your own content, especially for sponsored content, it's really important for me to make my own sponsored content, because then it doesn't feel authentic and people feel like I'm a sellout. So when you're making a piece of content, then you're paying someone to post it, that's a totally different process than reaching out to someone, working with them, collaborating on a piece of content, having their creative input. That's their work, that's their job. It's totally different than just handing over a piece of content, use this hashtag ad, It's really important to kind of have the influencer's creative input.
So do you consider yourself an influencer or a creator?
Both.
We got to update this panel title. How about you, Frankie? You meet somebody in an event, you can describe yourself with one word.
I feel like influencer is kind of becoming a dirty word. I don't like calling myself an influencer. That's weird. That's being hello, I am a very big deal. It feels very, very awkward. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's, it is very different. And I think that all campaigns you do with influencers or with creators, they have to be collaborations on both sides. Like, especially, I mean, everyone who does this, everyone that you're paying, like, that you're paying them, they're a professional, this is their profession. Like, you have to literally work together, or it's not gonna be good for either of you.
And I just feel like you just said something so important, because I think a lot of the times there's this kind of stigma that, like, this is a hobby.
Yeah.
Or, you know, this is just something I do. You know, I spend a lot of time on the internet. No, like, this is a full-time job. This is my career. This is your career. So I feel like a lot of the times brands, like, they downplay that, which is totally disrespectful, but it's like rude. But it's important to understand that, like, this content, like, this is my livelihood. This is my persona. Like, it's more than just, like, the internet. It's so much bigger than that. And I feel like once you understand that, you'll really be able to understand, like, how influencer and, like, social marketing works.
And how do you see companies now calculating their ROI on these campaigns? Maybe you've seen it firsthand, Carolina, and when you guys have worked on campaigns, you probably see what metrics they're looking at. But how does everyone justify these budgets now to their boss and show that they got a good return?
It's a lot of education. A lot of education. I'm telling you, we've been working with creators, you know, for a long time. You know, since 2013, I want to say officially, and influencers, bloggers, you know, much longer than that. But again, it goes back to the goal. So if you can articulate, manage expectations with what your goals are. So we had a reality show, you know, launched last year, and we wanted to make sure we had sort of, you know, get people excited, young people excited. It was, you know, one of those music reality shows. And so, you know, I created a campaign around, you know, using a creator. I spoke to him and I was like, hey, I'm thinking of this. What do you think? Would you be interested? Will you be in New York? And so he played a role of hosting and getting the fans excited. He was jamming with, like, the people that were auditioning. And so the goal there was really awareness. And the way that I managed the KPIs was how much engagement did he get, how many people were replying. They were asking him if he was going to be on the show, which was great because everybody was, like, commenting on his posts and looking at, I'm going to totally tune in if you're going to be on the show. They thought he was auditioning. So that was one. Another one is around video views, right? If your goal is to really, and I think a lot of the work with creators really around awareness. So you need to think about, is it the engagement, the replies, the likes, you know, do you just want views to that content? But I think it's really around the exposure and managing expectations, because they don't understand. Like, so a lot of executives don't understand how it is to work, because they think, okay, you hire them, so how much traffic did we get? I'm like, no, this was not a campaign to drive traffic to the site. This was a campaign to get more word of mouth around this particular initiative.
Yeah, when I first started doing campaigns, and then new kind of partners would reach out to me, like, so what was the return on investment of your past? I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't know what an ROI is. I literally said, I Googled, what is ROI? But then I started learning that, like, in a very corporate world, like, people need, like, numbers just to, like, feel good about what they did. So now every time I work with a brand, I put together, like, a full deck of how many people were reached, how many people were engaged, how many video views it got, how many clicks it got. Because I'm learning that to a really kind of structured corporation, like, that's so important. So I literally put every piece of, like, numerical information I have on a deck and send it to them, and I know that helps, you know, because that's just the way corporate works.
They love their PowerPoint.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, definitely.
But
I
we're
mean,
fun too.
yeah, I mean, I do like brand strategy and consulting around social video is kind of like a fifth side hustle, and, like, I really like doing that because I like seeing how these brands think about this stuff, and it's like flexing a different muscle, and so that way when it makes me more prepared when, like, people reach out to me, and I can kind of throw all that numbers at them, and not even just throwing the numbers at them, but explaining this is what this number means, and, like, having a specific goal for each campaign and having a specific CTA. And, like, I've worked with brands before who just want to get as many video views as possible. They want people to use a hashtag, or they want to know impressions on a tweet, and I'm happy to share all that information. But then I've also worked with agencies who have done campaigns where they've had, like, specific bit.ly links, and if you would have told me that any person in the world would have, like, screenshotted a Snapchat and then gone, like, bit.ly.com and, like, typed it in, like, that's crazy to me, but, like, they do it. Like,
Plus
it's
sign.
right, it's crazy. So, I mean, there's definitely ways to track it more so than people might think, but I think that it all starts with having a very clear goal.
Yeah, and I just want to add one more thing around the metrics, because we are very analytics driven, and we need to make sure that the things are making an impact. But I think it's also having for yourself, like, some benchmarks, so that when you go back, because, you know, sometimes they got 1 million video views, and I'm like, so what does that mean? Is that good? Is that average for that influencer or creator? Is that, is that what you guys were expecting? So we look at that, like that one of the campaigns that we looked at, I compared the artist versus the creator, just so they had context on the impact that the creator was having. I also, in another campaign, compared just the post that we had before the creator around that week, how that performed versus the creator content. And when we saw, like, it was a huge jump. So making sure that you have some sort of benchmark and understand how your content is actually performing, so that when you are investing, putting more money to have a creator create content, that you can show senior management or whoever, the brand, the partner, whoever it is that you're working with, that this is actually working and this is something that we should continue to do.
So I just saw Claudia post a great selfie to Snapchat, and it reminded me our goal is to get them all not just more engagement, but more followers than Britney Spears. So can you tell us what your username is on every social media platform?
@girlwithnojob. I'm very proud that I got that on all the platforms.
All right, so everybody follow everyone here on every social network you're on. Frankie?
Mine are all different. It's literally like a worst case. I know, I'm working on the trademark. So my Twitter is Frankie Greek, Frankie with an IE, Greek like Greek. My Snapchat is WT Frankie, and my Instagram is WT Frankie, but there's a period between the F and the R because someone has WT Frankie and they won't give it to me.
And mine is CV Valencia on all.
Good trademark. And that segues very nice to another question we got from Twitter from at not Hannah Montana,
I wish it
Montana
was
Allen.
Montana.
Is it better to focus on one channel or to have the same voice across all media and be super busy all the time?
Well, your voice is so important, and that should remain the same on every platform. Like, I have this like sassy, chubby Jewish girl vibe on all my platforms, but the content that I post on different platforms is different. So your voice should remain the same, but your content should be catered to the platform. So something like Instagram is like super photo driven. Something like Snapchat is super video driven, like YouTube. And Snapchat's more mobile, and Instagram's more mobile, but Facebook is a little bit not mobile. So you kind of have to cater the specific type of platform, the specific type of content to the platform, but your voice should remain uniform. That's like the number one key to creating a kind of consistent brand, is having a unique voice on every platform.
Yeah, I totally agree. Your voice should be consistent throughout. I think, a lot of people will say, like, get on everything, push yourself out on everything. Like, I don't touch Pinterest. Like, Pinterest has nothing to do with me. I don't really use Vine anymore either. But I think it's important, especially if you're just beginning or if you're trying to kind of revamp your social media and your brand, to just, like, throw things against the wall and see what sticks. And then you'll find, like I'm the same way. Like, Instagram stories, it's cool. There's no learning curve because it's the exact same product as Snapchat, but I don't remember to use it. Snapchat's a part of my routine. It's a part of my day. So I think that, like, if you're trying to figure out what works for you, like, say this week I'm going to focus on these 3 platforms and go super hard, and then whichever's like the most natural and you're creating the best content, stick with that.
Yeah, and just to add to that, at least personally, I think of them very differently in who are my followers on each platform, or my friends, if it's Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. So on Snapchat it might be a little crazier, on Instagram it'll be just, photos, and Facebook's just, updating the family. So I think just keep it in mind of the audience. I know from a company standpoint, we have different shows and properties, and the voice has to remain the same because it's that connection that you have with the audience. But you need to really cater to the formats of each platform, because otherwise you're just being lazy.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on that a little bit. I feel like for me, I've given my 110% to every platform, but I've reaped more benefits from certain platforms. And what I've noticed is that I know from analytics that my followers are mostly female, and they're really like Gen Z millennial, which is like a marketer's dream. But, and I know that, like, even as myself as a millennial or Gen Z, I think I'm right in the middle, I'm like shying away from using my computer for social purposes. Like, I do it for work, and then literally, like, I associate computer with my work, and I turn it off at night, and I just live on my phone. And I think that's the kind of mindset of a lot of young people. So I know that platforms like YouTube and Facebook, while I have a presence on them, I know that it's just not gonna be as successful for me, because I'm realizing my followers are looking for me on mobile platforms. So that's Snapchat and Instagram, and that's where I've had the most success. So while it's important to have a presence on every platform just for like your overall brand, it's more important to kind of know where your followers are looking for you, and then kind of like attack them with content, with amazing, hilarious content.
Great dramatic pause.
You can quote me on Twitter, attack them.
Actually, we wanted to delve now. I mean, I know that 99.9% of relationships between brands and influencers go perfectly, but have you ever had a horror story you can share with us?
Yes.
Working with a brand?
Well, I just recently, not recently, like maybe 6 months ago, parted with my representation. It just wasn't working out. I find that doing this is my job now. What's my excuse to send someone to a manager? It's important to me to kind of develop relationships. And the first sponsored post I ever got was with Burger King, and it was through Allison Broad PR. And I've now personally developed relationships with all the girls from Allison Broad PR, and they bring me half my business. So it's really important to me to kind of develop. What was the question?
Have you ever had
Sorry, yeah. So it's kind of from when I had management, and this when I was like, what's the point in having management if they're just gonna fuck you up? I got offered this wonderful, wonderful, wonderful opportunity to take a free trip to Mexico for this new show with a very big network, and it was in one of the biggest budgets I've ever received, and they reached out to me directly. I forwarded it to my manager, and I was so freaking excited, I packed my bags. And then about a week later, the girl from the network reached out to me. She was like, Claudia, we have to move on to another influencer. We never heard back from your manager. Bye. Okay. Never heard back? What are you doing? And he said, okay, I'll take care of this. He was on his phone. So why didn't he answer? So that was really upsetting, and that was kind of what drove me to be I'm an independent woman, and I don't need a fucking manager. So that's literally why I really I'm against the whole concept of representation. Just from a personal standpoint, the internet is such an intimate place. I share such deep emotions with my followers. I Snapchat from the bathtub. It's just that's the closeness. The closeness that's different than a traditional Taylor Swift fan relationship. It's she doesn't have that closeness. I have that closeness. So it would just feel wrong for me to kind of. It just doesn't feel authentic to have a full-blown talent agent representing me when I feel I can rep myself.
So you have no manager, no agent, no MCN, and no publisher?
Not anymore. Ever since,
Sounds
Mexico Gate.
Not that you're bitter about it.
No, I'm not as bitter as Mexico as I am about losing the Shorty Award, but whatever.
Oh, well, we'll address
Voting
that
is
later
rigged.
in the panel. This is going to become very emotional soon, so I hope everyone has their tissues. Horror story.
Horror stories. Yeah, so this was without naming any names, I'm going to tell this story. My first experience working with any kind of digital talent agency, I got this big fancy email in my inbox that was hey, we've been watching you on Snapchat for forever. We love the show that you do on Shorty Awards. We have this huge, enormous, name-worthy network with lots and lots of money who would like to hire you for an 18-week campaign that's going to be exactly like what you do for the Shorty Awards, but about X, Y, and Z. And I was like, oh my God, great, this is awesome. I'm so excited. And it was the biggest budget I've ever seen, and it was pretty early on into me doing this. So I was like, yes, I will do this. I will sign these papers that you've sent me. And then it became very, very clear immediately after that the people who were at this network had never seen anything I had ever created on any social media platform ever, and they were asking for super scripted, campy, over the top. They were sending me scripts. I don't do scripts. I'm not an actress. It's not my Snapchat. They were asking me to get my friends involved, specific friends that the agency knew of because they followed me on Snapchat, but they weren't planning on paying my friends, which is weird and bad. And they were it was just I had a phone call, and I remember vividly saying I'm not an Olsen twin. I'm 23 years old, and you want this campy ABC Family, Disney, it's just. And I understood who their audience was, and I understood, and it led to a conversation where I needed to educate them on you have this idea in your head of what a Snapchatter is, and Snapchat is just a medium. So if you at any point liked the brand and the voice that I had on the work that comes naturally to me, why are you trying to shove me into this other thing? And it ended up not working out, and they terminated my contract, and they stiffed me a lot of money. And that was when I was I don't really think I want to work with agencies anymore. This isn't a fun experience.
Horror story?
I mentioned one a little bit, but it was around. It wasn't with a creator. It was more with a brand that it was. They wanted to approve everything, and the person managing that for that brand, the sort of managing the account, had an egg as an avatar and trying to tell us, this is how you should be doing things. That I literally got into a fight with my boss. I'm like, let me do my job. We're not going to push that because this content does not make sense. Okay, you can tell the guy with the egg avatar that, I'm like, if they want this to perform well, so that was that was a fun night. But again, it goes back to sort of setting expectations. Another one was it was with the contracts. It was the management team of the creator was sort of held to work with, and literally we had the campaign, like we got to the place where we need to do it, and we still hadn't had a contract signed. I'm like, I'm gonna get fired, but I need to make this happen because we already, sort of promised this to the partner. And that was sort of a big learning in terms of like having a template of what are your expectations, because we are a content company, so we want to own the content. It's different, I think, when you're working with brands that are not content companies, because they're a product or whatever. And so it's different with us, so just having those expectations clear. And really, like, the representation is so important, because if they don't understand, if they're just thinking about the money and they're not thinking about the content itself, it makes it difficult to really come to an agreement. Literally, we signed like an hour before he started taping. So it was a nightmare. I don't know how that went about, but that was a huge learning. And so sort of, make sure you have a template in place with legal and your expectations of how you think you're going to be working with creators. And, you'll make some tweaks here and there, but that will alleviate a lot of headaches.
It's a double-edged sword, because like most of the time, the kind of verbiage in the industry is like, ugh, publicists, ugh, agents. But then some people literally won't work with you unless you have representation. So it's really kind of difficult to like navigate what's best. I still don't know, but
it comes down to trust, right? Because I remember I've worked with some that didn't have representation. They had it was one that was starting on, had great engagement, and he had like this weird club promoter as a manager, and he just kept like going back and forth. So then I text him like, look, I really want to work with you, but I can't get to a middle ground with this guy. So you tell me, I love your content, I think you'll have a lot of fun at this event, trust me, like, you're not going to create anything and you're going to have access to artists. So he's like, no, I'll do it, blah, blah, blah. And we, and I told him, like, you have free game, just stay within these parameters as long as you do this. But I think that relationship and that trust is very important, because then, if the manager is becoming an issue, and I had another creator tell me with the whole legal contract, he's like, I'm my own boss, so don't worry about that one. And I was like, okay, because she said that we could only do this, and it's like, Carolina, we're going to do this. Don't worry about it. I'm like, okay. So I think the trust and that relationship is so important, and it's going to make your campaign even better.
All right, so we're on to our last question. There were a lot more we got through Twitter, so I hope you guys would be willing to answer some over tweets if you're not, if they don't come up to you in real life. But just finally, for anyone in the audience, we've been talking a lot about how as brands they can work with influencers. But if anyone here wants to become an influencer and or a creative, what are your kind of parting thoughts on what they should do to become one?
I get this question all the time, and I have a really good answer. I feel like, I think this is a good thing.
So
a lot of
stay
times,
humble.
what do you want to be when you grow up? A firefighter. Like now, an answer you can say is I want to become an influencer, which I think is amazing. But I feel like there's a lot of the times people like see influencers getting to do really cool things, getting paid a lot of money to do it, and they're like, yeah, I want to become an influencer because I want to make a lot of money and be famous. Like, that's not a real answer, and that's like offensive to what I do. Like, I like to think that I create really meaningful content and that I engage with my users, and like a small part of me likes to think I'm changing the world a little bit. And so if you want to become an influencer, it's so important to do it for the right reasons, and it's so important to have a cause. I post a lot of really, really like dumb and silly things on the internet, but a lot of the times there's so much more behind it than just like a silly photo. So my advice to someone who wants to become an influencer is make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, have purpose, have cause, because you could end up with an enormous amount of influence, and you want to make sure that you're doing something really cool and really important or really meaningful with that influence, because or else, you're just a waste.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You have to figure out like why, like what is your end goal, like where do you want this to take you? And I think also a big thing that I've been kind of preaching to everyone as far as like my clients, people I know in my personal life, like my 17-year-old cousin who doesn't know how to use Facebook properly, like social media is real life. Like it's real. If you say something to someone on the internet, it's as if you're saying it to them in real life, and who you are, like I think we can all say like who I am online, who I am on Snapchat, who I am on Instagram, it's me. It's this person right here. And so I think you have to figure out like which parts of your, like know what you're signing up for, one, because if you are your own brand, if you are an influencer, you're putting a lot of yourself out there, you're opening yourself up to criticism. If you're on Snapchat, you're opening yourself up to a lot of inappropriate photos. And yeah, just be ready for that and have an end goal. Like the end goal shouldn't be like X amount of followers, or I want to be famous, or I want to have this amount of money in my bank account. It'd be like, what do you want to accomplish with this influence, and like what rooms do you want to be in, what people do you want to meet, and how do you plan on getting there?
Oh, well, let's let Carolina answer it, then we'll
Well, I'm not a
take
creator,
one question.
but I think from a corporate and sort of brand standpoint, I can say, think about what it is that you're passionate about. Like, what's your craft? Like, if you're a funny person, or you whatever it is. If music is what drives you, we tend to look at sort of different passion points, and if you fall within something like that, brands will say, oh, if I need something beauty, or I want someone funny, or I want someone that's really good at hosting. Think about those sort of passion points for you, and sort of develop them, and then from there, I think you'll see the types of brands that may want to work with you.
Well, and Megan, do we have time to take just one question?